My face-to-face encounter with God, secrets revealed. A true story by Brad Dahmer. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7:7.
This is part 2 in a 3-part video series of my incredible experience with God. This second video is a more in-depth explanation of my extra-dimensional time with God and how it changed my perspective of reality. I encourage you to watch the first video as it will help in understanding what I am about to discuss. It has been over 40 years since my face-to-face encounter with God. The glow of this encounter has long passed. That wonderful feeling of being touched by God's love and how that love affected people around me. What has not disappeared are the memories. It has taken all this time to understand what really happened, to get my head around it, to put it to words that make sense. I will explain this period in my life as best I can.
Death. Death is no more than passing from one room into another. But there's a difference for me, because in that other room I shall be able to see. Helen Keller.
In hindsight, the whole episode where I lost the desire for food was necessary to prepare my body and mind for the transition to God's realm of existence. Maybe I chose to go without food, or it was unconsciously suggested. But once the fast began, it was effortless. I did not struggle with the lack of food at all. It felt as if being moved along by an invisible force, guided so to speak. Understandably, the lack of food slowly weakened my body. I became so weak that any resistance to what was to come evaporated. My animal was tamed. That part of me that will do whatever it takes to survive. On that fateful night in bed, there was a feeling of letting go. Not struggling to hold on to this world any longer. So why was the nothingness phase needed as the last step in this transition process? Although my body was ready, my mind was not. My mind had memories that had to be erased. My identity, my ego, everything about my life had to be removed. But why, upon death, the brain dies too? My consciousness needed to be released. Nothing except consciousness can stand in front of God. The immense energy emitted by God vaporizes everything around it. Only consciousness can behold this intensity. Consciousness is what leaves the body upon death. Consciousness is who I really am. All things associated with my physical life needed to be left behind. The best way I have come up with to describe this nothingness phase is to close your eyes and erase all thoughts. Remove all feelings of who you are and the world you live in. Now all is left is stillness. Empty black nothingness. Now remove this black nothingness. I call it the void. Also, if it was not for my guide, finding a way out of the void would have been impossible. I have read about hikers lost in the mountains, and a presence leads them to safety. It is called the third man factor, a guardian angel so to speak.
Speed of light. You will begin to touch heaven, Jonathan, in the moment that you touch perfect speed. And that isn't flying 1,000 miles an hour, or 1,000,000, or flying at the speed of light. Because any number is a limit, and perfection doesn't have limits. Perfect speed, my son, is being there. Richard Bach, Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
3 things happened simultaneously upon bursting out from the void. As the void was ripped apart by a blinding flash, I traveled at the speed of light. Physics says that traveling at the speed of light reduces all distances to 0. Therefore, reaching the edge of the universe would happen instantly. That was the infinite feeling. There were no bounds, no limitations. I use the word edge to illustrate the idea of moving at the speed of light. However, there is no edge to the universe. It is infinite. Also, there was a feeling of what I will call true reality. It is like the feeling I have when waking up from sleep. Waking up from slumber, I shed the dream world and enter the physical world. That transitional feeling from irrational fantasy to a reality governed by the laws of nature was the same as I expanded into the infinite. The feeling of no limitations was more real to me than this constrained physical world. Lastly, there was no sense of time. Physics also says that traveling the speed of light stops time for the traveler, but greatly accelerates time for the physical universe.
Consciousness. Consciousness is not a brain function. Tim Van Lommel.
God, the One, the indivisible, a living consciousness just like me, focusing its attention on me, the knower of all things and the creator of all things. As I reflect on this fact, it is still difficult to grasp. It is like looking at the night sky. I know the specks of light are planets, and most are stars. I know that they are there. I can see them. But my mind cannot understand the enormity. It is amazing that God exists. But standing in front of God, my consciousness could understand that enormity, that infinity. My mind is an amazing organ that evolved over millions of years. Even though it is vastly complex, it processes information from the nervous system one piece at a time. My consciousness, however, is not bound by this limitation. It processes infinite information instantaneously. This is why I could experience infinity. God's consciousness is infinite. This consciousness is aware of all things. It is like how we know about our bodies. We are conscious of all things going on with our bodies. We are aware of our senses, our thoughts, and our emotions. This is like how God feels the universe. The universe is God's body.
Love. God loves each of us as if there were only one of us. Saint Augustine.
As a loving parent welcomes a long-lost child, God forgave me of past actions. It did not matter what I had done. I was home now. There was a profound absence of fear or anxiety. A loving warmth enveloped me. I was with my true parent, a love that will never abandon, never judge, never waver. God understood my pain and hardship, the struggle to survive. It was compassion based on understanding, and empathy driven by shared injury. This was the first and only time in my life someone transferred their thoughts and emotions onto me. I could directly feel its thoughts and emotions as if they were my own. As I gazed upon God, its immense energy radiated out in all directions. I knew it was love, but of such intensity and quality as to belong to something else. Let me explain. I know what heat is. I can feel it on my skin. When I start a fire to cook, I can feel its heat. When I stand in sunlight, I also feel the heat of the sun. They feel the same, but to say the heat of a fire and of the sun are the same is incorrect. The heat from fire comes from burning fossil fuels, whereas the sun's heat comes from the light of nuclear fusion. It supplies warmth but also is essential to sustain life. Without sunlight, plants would not grow. God's love is like the sun. It is different than what I knew, but also the same.
The universe. Limitless, undying love, which shines around me like a million suns. It calls me on and on across the universe. John Lennon.
Through the combination of God's love and consciousness, the universe is created. These two things, love and consciousness, construct everything in the physical world, all matter and all energies. If either of these two elements are not present, the universe will disappear. We live in a virtual universe. Like how computers generate simulated environments. If God did not focus its attention on something, it would disappear. If God did not love something, it would disappear. If God did not consciously focus and love my physical body, it would disappear. I think of it this way: when I breathe on a piece of glass, little droplets are created. I can see my breath, so to speak. The breath has water in it, but is invisible. The glass supplies the structure to turn what is invisible visible. Take away either of these two, and there would be nothing to see. Creating the universe is like this. When God's invisible love energy comes into contact with its conscious structure, the universe comes into being. The only thing that God does not create is my consciousness.
Free will. You are free to choose what you want to make of your life. It is called free agency or free will, and it is your birthright. Sean Covey.
God is free will. like we have free will. God uses this free will for action, just like we use our free will. God uses its willpower to make the universe a better place. Like a gentle breeze, it pushes the universe forward towards goodness. Without this push, the universe would stand still. Nothing would change. Nothing would evolve. This gentle push gives rise to a sense of time. When things do not change, we say that time stands still. Time always seems to move forward because of God's positive influence. Look back 100 years. Humankind is better off now than it was back then. Physicists say the universe started with what is called a Big Bang explosion that resulted in hot plasma. What turned this hot plasma into intelligent human beings? Evolution is influenced by God's forward movement towards goodness. The gentle breeze of God's goodness influences generational changes. These changes are hard to see on a day-to-day basis, like tiny swirls dancing back and forth in a pool of water. It is only when you look up do you realize they are part of a slow-moving river heading to the sea.
Re-entry. You don't see any borders between countries from space. That's man-made, and one experiences it only when you return to Earth. Sunita Williams.
Falling back to Earth, my audience with God was over. Passing through a rainbow of joyous emotions, it became clear the destination could be anywhere on Earth. Location, gender, race, it didn't matter. The body my consciousness could have arrived in was purely random. If this was a rebirth, it would have entered as a newly conceived child. It did, however, wake up in my own body, a fully developed adult body with the ability to remember. This is why I can recall my divine experience. This is also why children cannot remember their time with God.
Transformed. You can't have a physical transformation until you have a spiritual transformation. Cory Booker.
What have I come to realize about the world by meeting God? Well, the fact that God does exist. The idea of an omnipotent being is mind-blowing. That an infinite conscious loving being lives in another dimension of space and time. Also, God loves me. It is a love I have never experienced before or after. A love more intense than all the stars in the universe. This is what I learned about consciousness by meeting God. There is no separation between me and my consciousness. I am consciousness. Consciousness is not mind. Mind is part of my rational animal body. It is the coat I wear in this life. Consciousness can exist inside and outside the body. Consciousness cannot merge with other consciousnesses. They are separate entities. My mind creates the illusion of time because of the way it processes information. However, consciousness processes everything all at once. If God did not exist, I would not exist. The universe is constantly renewed by God through its consciousness and love. And God's positive influence is why we are better off now than any time in the past, and why the future will be better than it is now. Reincarnation is real. I will talk more about this along with what I believe is God's and humankind's true purpose in the third and final video. Thank you for watching.